Very good morning, everyone. And now, मुझे सवाल पूछने की बहुत आदत हो गई है. So let me ask you something simple. And I want you to answer it honestly, even if only in your own head. How much did you spend yesterday? I'm not talking about this month, this week, but yesterday. Take your time. Some of you know it down to the last rupee. Some of you have a rough idea. And a few of you, be honest, are currently trying to remember if you even took cash out or paid by phone. Now, that little pause, that little hesitation is exactly what we are going to talk about today. So, today's activity is actually the weekly money tracking exercise, right? So, let's begin with this opening thought that what gets measured gets managed. So let me say that again and let that feeling sink in that what gets measured gets managed. Now, this line is used in offices, in gyms, in kitchens, and it applies just as powerfully to our own money. We measure our weight before we manage our health. बिल्कुल बहुत से लोगों का मानना है वेट सही है तो इसका मतलब हेल्थ सही है, right? They're more worried about their weight than their health. We measure our blood pressure before we manage a diet. Yet, with money, the one thing that touches every single decision in our day, most of us are flying completely blind. Think of a ship's captain in the middle of the ocean. However skilled he is, however strong his ship, he cannot steer it anywhere useful without one thing: his instruments, his compass, his charts, his readings. And without knowing where he currently stands, improving direction is a meaningful phrase. So our finances work exactly the same way. You cannot improve what you cannot see. And most of us are steering our financial ship purely by guesswork, hoping we are heading the right way without ever actually checking the compass. But here is the good news. This compass isn't complicated. It's called tracking your expenses. Like simply writing down where your money goes. Yes, tracking expenses builds awareness. Awareness leads to better decisions. And you don't need perfection. You need honesty. And I know a few people hate to track expenses. कहते हैं ना सच्चाई दिख जाएगी अपने स्पेंडिंग की. People are not very welcoming for this. So let's make this real with a few familiar faces. Today we are meeting Kavita ji. She manages her entire household budget in her head and manages it well in her own words. But when she tracked every rupee for 1 week, she was stunned to discover that small vegetable vendor and grocery top-up trips, the ones she never treats as real spending, added up to almost as much as her monthly grocery bill itself. Nothing dramatic, just 50 here, 80 there, quietly adding up in the background. And then Anjali, the working woman, works in a marketing firm and swears her biggest expense is rent and a SIP. Whereas SIP is not an expense, but take that's how she treats it. But her 1 week of honest tracking reveals something else entirely. Food delivery apps. Between late work nights and lazy Sundays, she was spending more on delivery charges in just one more order than she was on her actual groceries. She hadn't lied to herself on purpose. She simply had never looked. And then there is Vinochi, a bank employee nearing retirement, considers himself quite disciplined with money. No debts, no loans, a steady saver. But his tracking week revealed a quiet leak. Small cash withdrawals for chai with colleagues, the newspaper, parking, and just one packet of cigarettes here and there. Individually, harmless. Together, enough to fund a small family outing every month. So none of these three were careless people. They were simply unaware. And awareness, once switched on, is very hard to switch back off. So let's do today's activity for this week. And for the next 7 days, record every single expense, no matter how small. That 10 rupee tea, that 50 rupee auto ride, all of it. And at the end of the week, sit down and group everything into simple categories: essentials, education, savings, entertainment, health, miscellaneous. If you want to note down the categories, I can say them again: essentials, education, savings, entertainment, health, and miscellaneous. And then ask yourself just one honest question: which category surprised me the most? So today is Sunday, and I'm definitely going to ask you next Sunday that you completed this week's work or not. So I am beginning to think about making all of you accountable. मैं होमवर्क देता रहता हूँ, चेक नहीं होता. So let's see what this will reveal. That single answer will teach you more about your money habits than any book or app ever could. Right? So from next week onwards, we will be checking homework also. So we spent years planning our careers, our children's education, our family functions down to last detail. And yet we rarely plan the one thing that funds all of it: our everyday spending. A ship's captain doesn't fear the ocean because he checks his compass daily. He simply knows where he stands and adjusts. So this week, become the captain of your own finances. Pick up a notebook, an app, even the back of an old envelope, and start recording. Not to judge yourself, just to finally see clearly. Because the goal was never to spend less. The goal is to spend knowingly. So, with that thought, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you.